Hello, YouTube world. My name is Frank, and I'm kicking off my YouTube channel. And it's been a little tough trying to figure out how to get this going. YouTube has helped me in many ways over the years with many subjects. So thank you, YouTube, for being there for me. And now here I am, becoming a content creator. The hard part was, what am I going to talk about? I did get on YouTube, and a number of creators would guide you towards your niche. What is your niche? I did come across one really good content creator, and his name is Gary V. That's his handle on YouTube. And he had one specific episode on exactly this, which was called, I believe, Your Niche is Being Yourself. And there it was. That helped me get started, and here I go. This is a subject that is very difficult, I believe, for anyone to talk about. This is going to be off the cuff, unscripted, and that is my battle with alcohol and defeating the evils of alcohol. And I'm very proud to use that term, defeating. I had drank alcohol pretty much my whole entire adult life. But I'm going to get to a specific year in my life. 2012, married with a 12-year-old son, a wonderful, beautiful son. And alcohol was in our house um, on a daily basis. And at this stage, I had become a daily drinker, not recognizing what was going on. And I wasn't the type to drink to get drunk. I enjoyed the taste of beer. I also enjoyed the taste of wine. Became a little bit of a wine collector, but that is not today's subject. Um, but it was catching up to me. Again, drinking daily. Had some changes going on in my life. Um, the home life wasn't the greatest. And I had a change at my place of business. Um, that business took in a new manager with a different approach, and that approach created some friction. Um, I didn't like feathers ruffled, um, as we all should be able to adjust to different, do you want to call it temperatures or different approaches? Sure. Um, but I had an amazing general manager that had hired me. I was doing an amazing job at this place of business. I was very happy, but things were just getting different. And so each day it became easier to want to have that beer when I got home. And again, as I became a daily drinker, we're not talking a beer. It was 6, 8, 10, and at times more than that. But getting to the specifics of 2012, I was on my way to work one day, actually got to work, and I found my heart starting to race. And I've never had any health problems before. Um, that also turned into my eyes getting very fuzzy, couldn't focus, wasn't dizzy, just didn't know what was going on with myself. I picked up the phone and called my wife, told her what was going on, and obviously created some panic there. But I wouldn't put myself behind the wheel because I was very scared. But I was able to get myself calmed down to the point where my heart wasn't racing. Um, my eyes got much more focused, and I was able to drive myself to uh, my doctor. I didn't go to the hospital, I went to my doctor. And they had found that I had a massive panic attack. Um, my vitals were off the charts, and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. Um, so they prescribed me, at the time, I believe, was called lorazepam, and I believe that's used to keep your brain from going into panic mode or something like that. So also in doing so, doctor wanted to know about my lifestyle, what possibly was creating these, uh, which now is this new panic attack situation. He asked me about my social side, and my drinking, and am I a drinker? And of course I said yes, but was I 100% truthful with where I was at with that? No. Uh, and so we've moved forward. I stayed on this medication, and things seem to be okay. But as it was suggested, you know, the doctor had mentioned that you need to watch yourself. You need to watch how much you're drinking and so on. Based on what I had told him, he didn't think that it was a problem at the time. But again, based on what I told him. So a few months go by and things seem to be okay. I don't seem to be having any panic attacks, but I didn't change my lifestyle. There was a day that came later in the year where my workplace had set up, um, attending what was called a summit, and this was done for many of the other similar workplaces in the area, uh, for improvement in what you do with your job and so on. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. In fact, I despised it. As I mentioned earlier, I felt a lot of friction with this new manager, and I felt like it was something that we were being forced to do that wasn't necessary. At least that's where my brain took that. So I was fighting that. Um, I didn't want to comply. Of course, I had to go. So we're at this event, and I'm in a coat and a tie. We're all dressed up, and we had to do some role playing. And it became my turn to do that role playing. Now, I am a tennis teaching professional by trade, so being in the public eye and being a, we'll call it, public speaker is not a problem for me. I do that on a daily basis. But in this scenario, because I didn't want to be there, I was creating some anxiety. Um, and again, it became my turn to engage. And I stood up, and I could not get words out of my mouth. I had a colleague next to me who was a close friend, and she's watching this meltdown happen. And I was scared to death because here I am staring the general manager in the eye as I'm trying to perform this exercise and couldn't do it. And the only thing that could go through my mind was, here he is watching me melt down, and I felt like he was looking for that. So I removed myself from that space. I went outside and got some air. But going outside, the only thing I can think about was getting out of there. I couldn't deal with this situation. And my brain started leading me towards, I need to get home because I need a drink. So I go back in. Um, my damage has already been done. I'm doomed in my mind. We finished the day, and the only thing I can think about was getting actually to the grocery store so that I can get some food for the night and some beer or wine. I got to the grocery store, and that's all I remember. I woke up in a hospital. I woke up, and as my eyes opened, I see my wife and son walking into the room, and the colleague that was involved in this summit, and another friend of ours, um, also coming into the room, and then following behind them was the doctor, and I have no idea what happened. Zero. I have no idea. So after a little bit of conversation with the doctor, how are you feeling, so on, I said, Doctor, what happened? He goes, well, you had a grand mal seizure. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before, aside from that massive panic attack. But this was extreme at this point. When I can't remember what happened, wow. Um, and so a few hours later, they actually released me. Um, they did tell me a story, though. They told me a story about the person who actually helped me during this episode at the grocery store. Um, there was a gentleman who worked in the store and saw this happening and actually grabbed my wallet and took my wallet and put it in my mouth to keep me from biting my tongue off because my seizure was that extreme. My tongue was out, and if he had not been there, there's a very good possibility something even worse would have happened. His name was Johnny. Um, I can't thank him enough for doing that. But getting back to this, I was given instructions of what not to do. Um, was put on an additional medication, and a couple of days later, there was a CT scan that was ordered. So I had to do a CT scan. Uh, and I've never been claustrophobic in my life, but here I am having seizures and panic attacks, and this space was not the most comfortable thing for me to do. But I made it through the test. And the goal there with the CT scan was to see if there was anything wrong with my brain. So I'm going over the results with the neurologist. I get to his office, and he wasn't the most pleasant person. We go over the tests, and there are some notes there uh, of my history. Um, Not talking about medical history, but things that my what I do outside of my social life, so to speak. And there was notes there that I do drink alcohol. So with him explaining that there was nothing wrong with my brain, he got right to the point and said, uh, "Let me see your tongue. Stick your tongue out." And my first thought was, "Wow, he wants to know. He wants to see if I, had bitten down and had some damage there." But that's not why. Apparently, people who drink heavily daily uh, do damage to your tongue, and it was there, and I had no idea. And so he got right to the point and said, "How much do you drink?" And the conversation got a little uncomfortable. Um, did I tell him 100% of the truth? No, I did it again. I was kind of hiding things. Um, I'm sure he was smarter than that. Um, and I believe that this is something that he has seen often. So he got right to some recommendations. And those recommendations were for me to go into a program. So you need to see someone. You need to stop drinking. The reason that this happened is because you weren't drinking and your brain was trying to work out chemicals to balance you out and couldn't do it. Therefore, you had a seizure. And Frank, this is not going to go away unless you stop drinking. You can't do this cold turkey. So we need to talk about a plan. And my response to him was, well, do I have to completely stop drinking? And boy, I think I pissed him off there. Um, and that did not go over well. But he heard me out and he goes, well, what do you mean by that? Are you going to wean yourself down? I go, well, I would like to. I would like to wean myself down to the point where I don't allow this type of thing to happen anymore. Um, and I fought it. I refused to go into a program. So I was kept on a medication um, in hopes that I would wean myself off, and that did not do it. Had another seizure, ended up in the hospital, and then again, another seizure. And this happened this time as I was traveling across the country to California with my wife and son to go to a conference. I had made it through the whole flight, no problem, on medication, no alcohol during the flight. And I'm in the airport securing my rental car. And I felt something coming on. And I had a very close friend that we had met witness me have a massive grand mal seizure again in an airport. Here's my wife and son watching this happen again. Of course, I ended up in the hospital. Um, they got me to the point where I was able to leave the hospital. Mentioned that you cannot stop taking the medication, don't drink, so on. So now here I am, and I'm just creating a lot of bad things. Uh, you can imagine what's going on and what's going through uh, my wife's head, uh, what's happening to my son, and how this is affecting him. And I did think about that often. Um, did that stop me? It didn't. We got back after the conference um, a number of days later and tried to get back to life. I'd have another one and another. Um, so this went on for quite some time, a couple of years, um, if you could believe that. I was that stubborn um, that I allowed this to continue to happen to myself, and I allowed this to damage um, my home life. So, in my attempting to slow down, which wasn't working as I mentioned, I um, I was hiding it. I was hiding it wherever it was convenient. One convenient spot was in the corner of my son's bedroom because it was close to the kitchen, and I wanted to be able to pour a glass of wine while I was cooking. Incredible. 2015 comes around, and it is May, and I am going to yet another conference. This one's more local, and I had another seizure at a red light in my car. And thankfully, there was a vehicle in front of me to keep my vehicle from going anywhere else. The authorities got to my vehicle, broke the passenger window out of my vehicle so they can enter the vehicle and put the vehicle in park. And I only know these things after the fact. Some close friends of mine got to the hospital um, and um, got me out of the hospital. Went to the conference, didn't drink, stayed on the medication. But here I am embarrassing myself. Time. It's not just embarrassing myself. I could have killed somebody that day. I could have killed myself that day. But I didn't stop. More time went by. I was trying to slow my drinking down. I truly was. But it wasn't working. Alcohol has such a hold on you. That's why I use the word evil. You can try all you want to stop. But when you get to a certain point and it's a daily thing, uh, for me, it was impossible. A few days after the conference, there was a meeting that had already been scheduled for me at work. And that meeting was supposedly about my upcoming season, wanted to know about my calendar, my dates, my events, what was happening. Um, I get to the meeting, to the boardroom. I open the door, and the boardroom's full. It's full of people who know me, have known me for as long as they've been there and as long as I've been there, which is now 15 and a half years at this job. And I didn't know why they were there. I sit down and I see a folder slide across the table to me out of my general manager's hand. And he stated, "Today is your termination day, Frank." You can imagine what's going on at this point. And I am systematically destroying my life. I was given 30 minutes to leave the property with all my personal belongings. I gathered those and I went to my wife's place of employment um, and told her what happened. And of all the things that she and my son have been through, now here I am unemployed. And her place of employment was my previous place of employment for teaching tennis. And so I had to scramble and salvage, with her agreement, the rest of the tennis season, teaching tennis at her club. So more time goes by. Um, had a couple seizures at home. Had another one at a graduation of someone else's family. I was asked to photograph for them. and I was happy to do so. And here I am waking up in the hospital again. Damage after damage after damage. The season ended um, in the winter time. Uh, I didn't work a whole lot because um, that was my arrangement at my previous employment, and so I had to try to figure out what I was going to do for the winter. Um, and another particular day, I wasn't doing so well. I was at home. All three of us actually were home. And I'm laying on the sofa, and I can feel a seizure coming on. And I actually called out to my son, 16 at the time, and I asked him to hold my hand. I had this thought in my mind that maybe the strength of me holding onto my son's hand would give me the strength and the power to possibly break this seizure that was about to happen. And believe it or not, it worked. I stared at him in his eyes, and he squeezed my hand, and the seizure was coming on. But his willingness and strength to help me broke that seizure. And that was a huge moment for me. Huge. I know all the damage that's been done. It's incredible. It's at a level that I never had thought I would get to ever in my life. I was a professional in the community. I lost that. I was a husband and was losing that. I was a father and was possibly losing that. And I believe it was the next day. I was sitting at the dining room table. This is now November 23rd of 2015. And my wife and son were both there. We were eating breakfast, and I said to both of them, "It's time." I had previously, uh, with one of my seizures in the hospital, had had a conversation with one of the nurses that I vaguely remember, and this nurse was very concerned for my future and wanted to stay in contact with me. And I thought about that. And when I had said to my wife and son that day that it's time, um, I'm assuming there was relief there from my wife and son. And we called that nurse. And that nurse had an avenue for me to go to. And it was a ways away. It was a little over an hour away. Wasn't quite sure how long this was going to be. I was just ready. I had I had done so much damage, and I couldn't continue on like this, and I couldn't continue to see the suffering of my wife and son. And so I get to this facility, and I don't know what I'm into, but I'm briefed. Um, they asked me to take my shoelaces out of my shoes. Asked me if I have a belt, take it off. Anything that had any tying capabilities, I wasn't allowed to have. And I was concerned at this point where I was. I knew I was in good hands, but I didn't know everything that was going on. Wasn't allowed to have electronics, so they took my cell phone and everything went into a locker. And so I was given a tour of the facility and shown, the stages of things, but was also shown who was there. Not every person, but what type of help was being given. There were people who were suicidal, had already attempted things to that caliber. Um, there were people who were uh, massive drug addicts, and there were people who were dealing with exactly the same thing I was, which was alcohol, alcoholism, and after the tour, I was brought to my room, and I had a roommate. We were capable of having roommates because we weren't in a threatening situation. Um, I remember distinctly the beds that we had to spend time in at night when we were sleeping. They were concave and plastic and in a manner padded, but these beds monitored us through the night. So as I go through this process, a day's gone by. They're taking my vitals 3 times a day, and I'm also being given medication, and I'm not quite sure what those were. This was their process to wean me off of alcohol. Um, but during this time, I obviously had this roommate, and I'm not going to remember his name, so I'm going to call him Jeff. Um, and we got to talking inevitably, and I had asked him, what he's there for, and he had told me that yeah, he's a drug addict. Uh, but he said it in a manner where it was no big deal. Um, and then he went on to say, he goes, yeah, I've been here before. I've been here a number of times. So I know the system. I know how this works. I'll be out of here as fast as I can get out of here. I've got I've got a life to go back to. And I go, so you don't have any plans to quit? He goes, no, no, I deal drugs also. I've already got things in line, and I got to get out of here. And I know how to work the system. I've done it before. So here's my, I don't know, second or third reality check of really wanting to quit drinking. For me, it was drinking. For him, it was his drugs. But hearing someone say that in a facility that's there to help them get over this, and he's abusing this facility, he's been there before numerous times, that struck me. I was beside myself. So that was part of the process uh, of me and getting help. Um, we'll call it subconsciously. And so um, that day went on, and he actually said to me, he goes, you look familiar. Do you live so and so? I go, yeah, I do live there, but I've never seen you before. And he was adamant that we had known each other. He mentioned a couple of gas stations, and I go, listen, if you saw me at a gas station, I was getting gas. Uh, for whatever reason that you feel like you need to let me know that you know me, I don't know you. And I didn't want to know this guy after he had lead me to his stories, being there before and so on. So anyway, getting back to it, the day went on, and they have a common area where we could all hang out. Um, and I'm not just going to stay in my room. So I go to the common area, and I see um, what looks to be an elderly gentleman, and he's in a wheelchair, and he has a nurse with him. And most others, if not all of us, didn't have a nurse with us. There were other people in the, other staff in the room, counselors and so on, just observing and so on. But this particular gentleman had a what looked to be a permanent nurse, and her name was Mary. And I come to find out that his name is John. And John was in very concerning um, shape. I was taken back by his condition. Um, and Mary was a very kind nurse. I asked her a couple of questions. Asked her what his name was. His name is John. Um, and she let me know about his situation. And she basically said, after I asked a few questions, and I didn't get too personal, but I wanted to know. And this gentleman looked so weathered, very, very weathered. Um, you could tell that his lifestyle had just taken everything out of him. And she had let me know that John will never leave this facility. He's in a wheelchair because he can't physically walk. He doesn't have control over his body, and she's there for his comfort. And John's going to pretty much spend the rest of his life in this facility. They're there to comfort him. And I'm just here. I am again, just being blown away. And these things are affecting me, and me looking into my future and what I don't want to ever happen to me. But it seemed like I was on that path. But thankfully, here I am at a recovery center. So I stay next to John, and I'm talking to the nurse, and I'm watching John, and John starts to um, what looks to be hallucinate, and sure enough, that's exactly what he was doing. So I'm witnessing this, and John is is acting like he's reaching for something, and so his hands start moving, and he looks like he's going down to pick something up, and he's leaning forward, and the nurse is there, and she's concerned that he's going to fall. Obviously, that's one of the reasons why she's there, and he's in a wheelchair and so on. And he's reaching down, and and I watch him pretend that he's picking up what looks to be something large, and he's holding the top of something, and he's got his hand on the bottom of something, and he's shaking, and he's bringing this up and bringing this up, and he's putting it up to his mouth, and I'm watching this whole scene, and then he's putting the bottle, what I believe to be the bottle, down. Obviously, he's drinking something. And so I asked the nurse, what's going on? And she said, well, Frank, he's he has drank moonshine his whole life. His family was in moonshine, and he drank a couple of gallons a day, and he has literally fried his brain. He's sadly in a state of unrecoverable. I I was so it was so sad to watch this. I was stunned. And then here comes another episode, and he's shaking, and he's going into his pocket, and he's reaching down in his pocket, and he's shaking, and he gets whatever is in there, and he brings it up to his mouth, and he uses his other hand, and he's lighting something, shaking. He gets this lit, smokes whatever he's smoking. All hallucinations again, and this brings himself to a state of relaxing, as if all of this happened. And I'm beside myself. I'm I cannot believe this. my process continues. I go through a couple of days. My vitals are taken 3 days, excuse me, 3 times a day, as I had mentioned. And on the third day, the nurse comes to me with her normal, brings me my medication, asks me how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, um, and then proceeds to tell me that the doctor wants to meet with me. And so um, I meet with the doctor, and the doctor says, "Well, so how are you feeling? What's going on with you? Are you agitated? Are you this? Are you that?" And I said, "No, I feel wonderful. I, I'm really surprised. How am I doing?" He goes, "Well, it's rare that we see this, but you have gone through this process faster than we've ever seen anyone go through this process. Uh, Normally, this takes quite some time, based on the information that we have from you and how much what you've been through and so on. And I'm I'm concerned to ask this of you, but do you feel like um, you're ready to go home?" And again, this has been 3 days, and I can understand his concern. Um, but I said, yes, yes, I'm ready to go home. And he says, "Are you sure?" I said, "There's going to be some things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to follow up. You're going to have to see someone. We're going to have to get you um, some counseling." And I said, "Well," I said, "I feel like I haven't felt in a very, very long time." He goes, "Well, can you arrange transportation?" And I said, "Well, yeah." Um, he goes, "But are you sure? We want to make 100% sure that you're going to be okay. Our main concern is that you're not going to go back to your lifestyle, and you have to promise me that you're going to follow up with someone and uh, and seek some counseling and so on." And so I agreed, and they gave me my cell phone back, and I was able to make a phone call. So I made a phone call to that colleague of mine. I didn't call my wife. Um, and I asked if she could help me out, and she asked me what was going on. She didn't know where I was. And I said, "This is where I am." She goes, "Yeah, there's no way I can get there, but I have someone who works for me from time to time at my home who's in that area. Let me reach out to that person and see if that person can help us out or help you out." And so, sure enough, this person is actually on their way back to the area where we live, and she was able to um, commit to help me. So they don't just trust that at the facility. They have to communicate with that person who's picking you up. It's not like a get out of jail thing where they open up the doors and say good luck. They need to know that someone responsible is coming for you. So they make that connection with the doctor, and this person comes and gets me and takes me home. So I get home, and um, front door is locked. But I knock on the door, and my wife greets me and gives me a hug, but is very surprised. Very surprised. She is smiling, and I'm happy to be home. Um, and she asked me some questions. Why? How come you're out? What's going on? I go, they were comfortable with my progress, and I have some homework. I have to follow up with someone. I have to. There's already been a meeting set up with someone through that facility here in where we live, and and everything seemed to be okay. Semi joyous that I'm back, but then something happened 10 or 15 minutes later, um, and the atmosphere changed. It was very negative. I shouldn't have been let go. You should have been there. I can't believe this is happening. and uh, that was a sad moment for me. Um, I was very excited to um, get back on track with everything. I didn't think it was going to be an instant fix. I never thought that, but that wasn't the case there. And so my son gets home, um, and he's happy to see me. Um, and so a couple days go by, and I'm back in the uh, back at home and trying to work through things. And I have this meeting this particular day, so I go to this meeting, and it wasn't AA. It was just a private counselor. I never thought I needed to go to AA, even back years and years ago, um, for whatever reason. Nothing against AA. Yeah, I just didn't feel that I personally was the fit for that. So here I am with this private counselor, and he's asking me some questions, and it wasn't, again, it was similar. The environment was similar with this neurologist that I went to see, and it was very negative feeling. It wasn't positive. It wasn't, listen, this is the beginning of the rest of your life. It wasn't like that. It was um, unfortunately uncomfortable, as if I was an evil person. And he proceeds to tell me that you need to accept the fact that you're an alcoholic. You're always going to be an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. We're all alcoholics. These are words he's saying to me. And I'm not quite sure about this approach. I was stunned. More time goes by, we talk about some more things, but I'm thinking to myself, this is certainly not going to help me. So we get to the point of the meetings ending, and he looks at his scheduler, planner, and says, "Okay, so what's a good time for us to set up our next meeting?" And I said, "There's not going to be another meeting. Um, this has not been a positive meeting. Um, you're not making me feel like you're going to help me." And he went on to say a few things, and he goes, "Well, good luck, because you're going to need it." And I left. I went back home, and I shared these things with my wife. Um, and I did not seek further guidance or counseling. We tried to work through our home life. Um, I felt like things were in an okay position. Uh, my son was, what I believe, was happy that things were good. I was not drinking. Sadly, um, my wife was not convinced that I was not drinking. Um, she continued to drink. She did not stop, um, and that's her decision. Um, it's not mine. And we moved forward, trying to make things work. I ended up getting a new job right around the corner from us. Um, it was what I thought to be a very good job. It was a wonderful place, a wonderful facility to work at. Yes, still in the tennis industry, um, and I was so happy to have this job. It was going to help me really move forward. Um, I decided after 2 years actually to move on. Um, And I know it seems like I'm fast forwarding here, but in all of this time that went by of me getting back home, I was not drinking. I didn't seek any more counseling. Um, I was, do you want to call it cured? Yeah, I was and am. On November 23rd of this year, 2022, will start 7 years, 7 years of me removing that evilness that controlled me. Sadly, that marriage ended. I had plans to in hopes that we could do some things. I relocated somewhere, and it didn't go in the direction it was supposed to, and the marriage ended. Um, Thankfully, uh, I maintained my relationship with my son through that time. It was very, very difficult for my son. He graduated high school during this time, um, and I feel horrible, horrible, still do, and still and always will, that he had to go through my struggles with that evilness that just grabbed a hold of me and just stole me for a period of time. And then for him to have to go through his mother and father divorcing just really made me sick to my stomach. But he's come out of this very well. I believe we have a fantastic relationship. He's a very strong young man, now 23 years old. I'm very proud of him, and I'm very happy that he had faith in me to get through this. Am I a rare bird? Am I a rare bird that 3 days in a facility and no further counseling or treatment was needed? I don't know. I can tell you right now that my willpower is extremely strong. I'm never going to drink again. I'm around people all the time that drink, not in those environments, but around people who I know that drink. I can go to a grocery store and walk right past it and not even think about it. Not even think about it. I can go to an event with friends and they'll be drinking. I can go to a restaurant and there'll be alcohol around, and it doesn't even cross my mind because I found I'm strong enough to beat that. I have a close friend that I've known since I was 15 years old. We have wonderful conversations every time we talk. Um, he had asked a specific question, and I felt that it was really important that I state this in this story. And his question was, and I don't remember it verbatim, what is your current state? How do you feel? What stands out the most? And very quickly, I was able to answer using the word clarity. And that's a very strong, powerful word, in my opinion, because I hadn't felt that for quite some time. And I don't mean from a waking up every morning foggy, hungover type of feeling. It's true clarity throughout the entire day, even to the point of having amazing dreams again. And yes, waking up every morning, knowing what I'm going to do, knowing what's ahead of me that day, not things I've forgotten, but true clarity. I'm so happy he asked me that question. And his response to me was, wow. So, my goal with this is that someone watches this and is either going through this and trying to find a way to help them, or someone has a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a brother, a sister, a parent who is going through something very similar to this particular story that could help them. That's my story as my introduction to my YouTube channel. And moving forward, this will be about my life now. And I can't wait to share those things with you. I would like to say that where I'm at in my life, I'm very happy. I have a wonderful girlfriend. I am still a tennis teaching professional, have been for 27 years. I actually dove into commercial modeling. So maybe I'll share some of that on my channel. And photography has been a part of my life for a very long time, even through my dark times, these evil times of what was happening to me. And I'm very proud of my photography, so I will be sharing some of that on my channel. I want to thank you very much for watching this entire video. And I truly do hope that it can help someone. And I'm looking forward to seeing some comments below in the future, both negative and positive. And I'm ready for that. I know that there are some folks who are currently in my life who don't know anything about this, did not know that I went through this. And it's going to be a shock to them. But that's okay. That's okay. Because this is who I am now. And I have a long life ahead of me. So thanks again. And until my next video, as a very close friend of mine used to say to me as he delivered packages to our house, make today your best day ever until tomorrow.